Today's episode, Why Not Just Adopt? It's a question that stops conversation in their tracks, isn't it? As someone who spent over 24 years in the fertility industry, I can tell you the reality behind those four simple words is far more complex than most people realize. Let me start by addressing something crucial. When people say there are so many children waiting to be adopted, they're often speaking from a place of caring, but the landscape of adoption has evolved dramatically over the years. The truth is, the adoption process, whether you're considering domestic, international, fostering to adopt, or any other path, is just as layered and complex as pursuing IVF or surrogacy. Each route has its own unique challenges, possibilities, and yes, its own beautiful moments. Welcome to the Fertility Cafe, where we explore the beautiful complexity of modern family building. I'm your host, Eloise Drain, and this is a space for honest conversations about surrogacy, egg donation, and the journey to parenthood. With expert insights and real stories, we're here to guide you through the medical, legal, and emotional aspects of third-party family building. We believe that love has no limits, and neither should parenthood. So, back in episode 19, we touched on this topic that keeps coming up in our community, that persistent question of why not just adopt? The response was incredible, and your question showed me we need to dig even deeper into what this really means. Today, we're taking an honest, expanded look at what it really means to pursue IVF with surrogacy versus adoption. With over 2 decades of experience guiding families through these decisions, I've seen firsthand how that seemingly simple question can feel both dismissive and overwhelming. We're going to build on our previous discussion and break down the realities of each journey. No judgment, no oversimplification. Whether you caught episode 19 or you're just joining us, today's conversation will give you the detailed information you need to make choices that feel right for your situation. Modern adoption landscape. All right, let's talk about what adoption really looks like in 2025. I want to paint a clear picture of the options that exist today, both from adoption and fertility treatments, because things have changed so much, and having accurate information makes all the difference when you're exploring these paths. You know what's interesting about adoption? It's not just one single path. It's more like several different roads that can lead to building your family. Let me walk you through them. First, there's domestic adoption. This can look different for every situation. You might work with an agency or you might work with an attorney. One of the biggest changes in domestic adoption over the years is the concept of openness. Some adoptions evolve ongoing contact with birth families, while others are more closed. It really comes down to what everyone feels comfortable with. It bears to note that only 1% of all infants born in the US are ever placed for adoption. International adoption. That's a whole different story these days. If you talk to someone who adopted internationally 10 years ago, their experience would probably look nothing like what happens now. Countries have really changed their approaches. Some have new requirements, others have completely revamped their processes. It's why working with professionals who stay current with these changes is so important. Then there's foster care, which is often misunderstood when it comes to adoption. Unlike private or international adoption, the foster care system is not designed to place children for adoption immediately. Its primary goal is to family reunification, helping biological parents regain custody whenever possible. That doesn't mean adoption never happens through foster care. It does, but it's a process that comes with a lot of uncertainty. Many children in the system are eventually reunited with their birth families. And for those who do become eligible for adoption, it can take years before parental rights are terminated. So if you're considering the foster care as a path to adoption, it's important to be prepared for the emotional complexities. Foster parents provide stability and care, knowing that the child in their home may or may not become available for adoption. It can be a deeply rewarding path, but it requires patience, resilience, and a willingness to support the child's best interests, even if that means saying goodbye. Another layer with foster care is many times infants are not available for adoption. Median age for a child available to adopt through foster care is 7 years old. And children enter foster care for a reason: abuse, neglect, special needs, etc. This means that these children often have some kind of mental, behavioral challenges which requires more support than a typical infant adoption. Another option is kinship adoption, which happens when a family member, like a grandparent, aunt, uncle, or even an older sibling, adopts a child within their own family. On the surface, this might seem more straightforward than other types of adoption, but it comes with its own unique emotional and legal considerations. Family relationships can become more complicated, and boundaries need to be clearly defined, especially if the biological parents remain in the picture. Whether you're looking into foster care, kinship adoption, or private adoption, each path has its own set of challenges and rewards. What's most important is understanding what works best for your family dynamic and what you're emotionally prepared for. Now, regardless of which path we're talking about, there are some basics you'll need to know about. Every type of adoption involves getting a home study done, where your home will be analyzed by professionals, completing medical evaluations, submitting references, going through background checks, providing financial documentation, and completing some form of training or education. If you're looking at international adoption, you'll also need to think about working through immigration paperwork, planning for possible travel, handling additional documentation requirements, and additional training on culture, language, and other requirements for that specific country. And with foster care, you're looking at taking specific training courses, working alongside state agencies, and understanding how the legal side works. Let me share more about what each of these paths actually involves day to day. Let's talk about what it actually means to work with an adoption agency versus an attorney. When people ask me about this, I always start by explaining that there's no one size fits all answer. Both paths can work, but they offer different kinds of support and guidance. Working with an adoption agency typically means you'll have more hand holding throughout the process. They often provide counseling services, handle the matching process, coordinate with birth families, and manage a lot of the paperwork. They usually have established relationships with other professionals you'll need along the way, like social workers for your home study. Going the attorney route, that can work if you're comfortable being more hands on with the process. Some people prefer this because it gives them more direct control. You might work with an attorney if you're already connected with a potential birth family, or if you're doing a kinship adoption. Now, let's talk timelines because this is something that often surprises people. With domestic infant adoption, the matching process can take anywhere from a few months to several years. That's not meant to discourage anyone. It's just the reality of the situation. The time frame often depends on your specific preferences and circumstances. International adoption, those timelines have gotten longer over the years. Most countries now have more thorough processes in place to protect everyone involved. You might be looking at 2 to 3 years from start to finish, sometimes longer. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough: the financial side of adoption. The costs can vary dramatically depending on the path you choose. But what's really important to understand is that there are often resources available to help. There are grants, tax credits, and even some employer benefits that can make a big difference. I'll share more about costs shortly. Speaking of resources, let's talk about building your support system. Whether you're considering adoption or fertility treatments, having the right people in your corner makes a huge difference. This might mean working with experienced professionals, connecting with others who've been through similar journeys, or finding counselors who understand the unique emotional aspects of the process. Before we move on to fertility treatments, let's talk about some realities of adoption that often catch people by surprise. These are important factors that can significantly impact your journey. State laws play a huge role in adoption. For example, Some states have restrictions based on sexual orientation or marital status. This means the options available to you might look different depending on where you live. It's not about whether these laws are right or wrong. It's about understanding what you might encounter so you can make informed decisions. Let's talk about something that can be tough to think about: birth parent rights. The reality is, in domestic adoption, birth families can change their minds within certain timeframes. Each state has different laws about this. Some states give birth parents 24 hours to change their mind. Others allow several days or even months. This isn't meant to scare anyone. It's just part of understanding the process. I am aware of couples who were matched with four different birth mothers. All fell through after birth, as the birth mothers changed their minds. International adoption has gone through major changes too. Some countries that were once open to international adoption have closed their programs completely. Others added restrictions about who can adopt, things like age limits, sexual orientation, marriage requirements, or even restrictions on certain medical conditions. Background checks are another crucial piece. Past legal issues, even minor ones, might affect your ability to adopt. This could include DUIs, certain misdemeanors, or even financial issues like bankruptcy. Some agencies and countries have stricter requirements than others. These aren't just bureaucratic hurdles. They're real factors that can shape your adoption journey. Understanding them upfront helps you make decisions that work for your situation. And here's something interesting. In my work, I've met families who ended up pursuing surrogacy after initially exploring adoption. Sometimes they encountered some of the barriers we just talked about. Other times they went through adoption situations that didn't work out. It just shows how family building journeys can take unexpected turns, and what works best might shift as you learn more about other paths. Now, let's shift gears and talk about what's happening in the world of fertility treatments. When we look at the fertility landscape today, we're really talking about several different paths. You've got traditional IVF, where embryos are created and transferred. Then there's gestational surrogacy, which involves someone else carrying the pregnancy. And within each of these paths, you'll find options like using donor eggs, sperm, or embryos. The science behind IVF has gotten pretty incredible. The technology for testing embryos has advanced significantly. Labs can screen embryos for certain genetic conditions. Freezing techniques have improved so much that success rates with frozen embryos are practically the same as fresh embryos. These advances mean better success rates and more options for family building. Modern fertility care has become much more personalized. Treatment plans aren't one size fits all anymore. Doctors can tailor medications, adjust protocols, and time things based on individual circumstances. Gestational surrogacy adds another layer to the IVF process. Instead of the intended parent carrying the pregnancy, a gestational surrogate does. This is different from traditional surrogacy from years ago. Gestational surrogates have no genetic connection to the baby. They're carrying an embryo created through IVF using either the intended parent's genetic material or donors. The surrogacy journey can take different routes. Some people work with agencies, while others connect with surrogates through friends, family, or their own networks. Independent journeys happen all the time. What matters is that everyone, regardless of the path, goes through proper medical and psychological screening, has solid legal contracts in place, and coordinates the IVF process carefully. Think of it like building a strong foundation. You need all the right elements, but there's more than one way to put them together. Timing and money are usually top of mind when considering these paths. With surrogacy, the timeline varies considerably. Finding the right match might happen quickly, or it could take several months. The costs are significant. That's just the reality. But the financial picture isn't always as daunting as it first appears. Some insurance plans are starting to cover certain treatments. More employers offer fertility benefits these days, and several financing options exist to help make treatment more accessible. Let's talk about putting all this information to work for your situation. These are big decisions, and having information is one thing. Knowing how to use it is another. First, let's toss out the idea that there's a better choice between adoption and fertility treatments. These paths aren't competing with each other. They're just different routes that might fit different situations. The first practical step is understanding your state's legal landscape. Some states have restrictions that might affect your options, whether that's with adoption or surrogacy. Getting clear on this early saves time and helps narrow down your choices. Then there's the medical piece. If you're considering fertility treatments, your doctor can give you specific information about your situation. They can talk through what protocols might work best for you, potential success rates, and what to expect. Timing is another big piece of the puzzle. Sometimes people assume one path will be quicker than the other, but that's not always true. Both adoption and fertility treatments can have unpredictable timelines. The key is understanding what those timelines might look like for your specific situation. Let's talk support systems. Whatever path you're considering, you'll want to think about what kind of support you have and what kind you might need. This could mean practical support, like someone to help with appointments. It might mean emotional support from people who understand what you're going through. Or it could mean professional support from counselors who specialize in fertility or adoption journeys. Financial planning is part of this too, but it's not just about the total costs. It's about understanding what resources are available. There could be grants, tax benefits, or financing options you haven't discovered yet. One thing that often gets overlooked is thinking about your comfort level with uncertainty. Both paths come with unknowns, just different kinds. Being honest with yourself about what types of uncertainty you're most comfortable handling can help guide your decision. Remember, this isn't just about finding the perfect path. It's about finding the path that makes the most sense for your situation right now. I want to share some real world strategies that could help you navigate these paths. All this information is great, but sometimes the hardest part is just figuring out where to start. One of the most helpful steps is talking to people who do this work day in and day out. Reach out to some professional in both fields. Get a feel for how they work, what their approach is like. Sometimes just having that first conversation can help things click into place. Many clinics offer informal orientation sessions. No pressure, just a chance to learn more. Same with adoption agencies. They'll often host informational meetings. It's totally different when you can sit in a room, or these days, maybe a Zoom call, and just listen and learn. The chance to ask questions in real time can be super valuable. Something I've noticed really helps keeping track of your reactions as you learn about different options. Not some formal journal, just quick notes on your phone or wherever works for you. These gut reactions tell you a lot about what feels right for your situation. For anyone considering fertility treatments, sitting down with a reproductive endocrinologist can be really helpful. Even if you're not sure that's your path, having that medical conversation helps you understand what's possible. Every situation is different, and they can talk about what makes sense specifically for you. When looking into adoption, take some time to check out different agencies or professionals. The way they communicate matters, their approach to answering questions, their transparency about the process. All of this gives you a feel for whether they're the right fit for you. State laws around family building vary significantly, and this can particularly impact single parents, LGBTQ plus individuals, and people with disabilities. Let's talk about what this really means in practice. Single parents building their families might face different requirements with adoption. Some countries have specific rules about single parent adoption. Some agencies focus primarily on married couples. But there are absolutely agencies and professionals who work extensively with single parents. It's just about finding the right match for your situation. For LGBTQ plus families, laws vary significantly by state. Some states have strong protections and support for LGBTQ plus adoption and surrogacy. Others have restrictions or allow agencies to decline working with LGBTQ plus families based on religious beliefs. The same goes for fertility treatments. Some clinics have extensive experience working with LGBTQ plus families, while others might not. People with disabilities often face unfair assumptions about parenting. Some adoption agencies or professionals might not understand that having a disability doesn't define your ability to be an amazing parent. Finding professionals who get this, who see your whole picture, that makes a huge difference. The key is working with professionals who have experience with your specific situation. They'll know the current legal landscape, understand potential challenges, and help you navigate the path that makes sense for you. They should be able to point you toward resources and communities that can offer additional support. Financial considerations. We all know that growing a family can be expensive, but how expensive? Well, let's break it down. If you're looking into IVF and surrogacy, here's what you can expect. IVF costs 12 to 20,000 per cycle. Then there's medication costs, 3 to 7,000. Surrogate compensation, 50 to 80,000. Agency fees, 20 to 50,000. Legal fees, 5 to 15,000. Insurance and medical expenses, 15 to 40,000. A complete surrogacy journey can range from 100 to 200,000. Check out episode 106 where we break down the fertility financing cost. Now let's break down the costs of adoption because this is one of the biggest questions people have when weighing their options. Domestic private adoption typically costs 50,000 or more, depending on the situation. Here's where these costs come from. Agency fees, 15 to 25,000. Legal fees, 5 to 15,000. Birth mother expenses, 7 to 15,000. This can include living expenses, medical costs, and other forms of support. Home study, 2 to 3,000. Additional expenses, 5 to 10,000. But in some cases, the total cost of domestic adoption can climb to 100,000, especially if you're covering medical expenses for the birth mother or working with a high-fee agency. International adoption tends to be even more expensive, averaging 150,000 or more. In addition to agency and legal fees, there are added costs like travel expenses, which sometimes require multiple trips, passports and visa fees, government processing fees, translation and document authentication costs. Because international adoption laws vary by country, some governments require in-person visits before finalizing an adoption. This can add significant time and expense to the process. On the other end of the spectrum, foster care adoption is often free or very low cost. Most states cover the home study, attorney fees, and court costs. That said, there may be hidden costs like medical exams or training sessions, which you may have to pay for out of pocket. But overall, foster care adoption is the most affordable route for those open to the process. Kinship adoption, where a relative adopts a child within their family, varies by state. Some states streamline the process, reducing costs and paperwork, while others treat it the same as a domestic adoption, requiring home studies, legal fees, and background checks. Financial assistance for adoption. One of the biggest advantages of adoption is that there are more financial aid options compared to surrogacy. Some of the resources available include federal tax credits, currently over $14,000, employer benefits that reimburse adoption expenses, grants and low-interest loans specifically for adoptive families. So while adoption can still be expensive, these programs can help offset the costs significantly. At the end of the day, both adoption and surrogacy require financial planning. What matters most is understanding the true costs, exploring financial resources, and choosing the path that makes the most sense for your family and budget. Medical history and genetic considerations. Now let's talk about medical and genetic factors because this can be a huge piece of the puzzle. With IVF and surrogacy, you may have a genetic connection to your child. You'll have complete access to medical history. You can screen for genetic conditions. If you're Doing IVF, you have full control over prenatal care, and you can choose donor material if needed. With adoption, the medical history may be limited or unknown. The prenatal care history may be incomplete. You may only get a partial birth parent medical history. There's no control over pregnancy conditions. There may be possible substance exposure during pregnancy. For some families, having a genetic link or full medical transparency is really important, while others, it's not a major deciding factor. This is something you'll want to think about when weighing your options. Emotional and relationship dynamics. Another major piece of this decision is the emotional side of things. Both surrogacy and adoption come with unique relationship dynamics that are important to understand. With surrogacy, there are clear boundaries set through legal contracts. Your relationship with your surrogate is a professional and relational one. You will have agreed upon contact during and after pregnancy. Everyone involved has predetermined roles and expectations. There's often support from mental health professionals throughout the process. With adoption, the level of openness varies by situation. Some adoptions have frequent birth family contact, while others are more closed. You'll need to navigate an ongoing relationship with the birth family. There's always the possibility of unexpected contact requests in open adoptions. Adoption can come with complex emotional dynamics from all parties. Birth parents may experience grief and loss, which can be a major factor in post-adoption relationships. Neither of these paths is easier emotionally. They're just different. Some people feel more comfortable with the structured nature of surrogacy, while others are open to evolving relationships that come with adoption. Making your decision. So, how do you decide which path is right for you? Here are some key questions to ask yourself. How important is a genetic connection to you? What level of uncertainty can you handle? Adoption can have unexpected changes, while surrogacy is typically more predictable. What is your budget and timeline? Can you financially commit to your chosen path? How do you feel about an ongoing relationship with the birth family? What level of involvement do you want in the pregnancy? What support resources do you have? Whether it's financial, emotional, or legal, you'll need a strong support system in place. Again, at the end of the day, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. The best path for you is the one that aligns with your personal values, circumstances, and vision for your future family. Before we wrap up, let me emphasize something crucial. Neither path guarantees a shorter wait time or an easier journey. What matters is choosing the path that aligns with your values, circumstances, and vision for your family. Remember that this journey is yours to navigate. If you'd like to learn more about either path, visit our website at thefertilitycafe.com. You can also watch the full video version on our YouTube channel. Remember, love has no limits. Neither should parenthood. Thank you for joining us at the Fertility Cafe. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who might benefit from this information. You can find show notes and resources from this episode in the description or visit thefertilitycafe.com for more information.